Imagine waking up tomorrow with nowhere you have to be. No alarm, no commute, no messages from your boss, no calendar reminding you that you are already late. You open your eyes when your body is finished sleeping, step outside, and realize that the entire day belongs to you. To us, that sounds like a vacation, but for most of human history, it was simply normal life. Our ancestors lived for hundreds of thousands of years before offices, salaries, schedules, or even the idea of a career existed. Yet they still had to find food, raise children, avoid predators, and survive terrible weather. So how much of their day was actually spent working? And what did ancient humans do with all the time that remained? During the 20th century, anthropologists began studying communities whose lives still depended heavily on hunting and gathering. They recorded how long people spent directly obtaining food. The results surprised almost everyone. In several groups, adults hunted or gathered on only 2 or 3 days of the week. A successful hunt could feed a camp for days. Gathering plants, roots, nuts, and fruit was often more reliable than chasing animals. This did not mean people spent the rest of the week doing absolutely nothing. Meat had to be butchered, hides had to be cleaned, tools had to be repaired. Fires, shelters, and children all required attention. But there was no clear border between work and life. Nobody began a shift at 9 in the morning. Nobody measured the number of berries collected per hour. People dealt with a task when it appeared, and when the task was finished, they stopped. Of course, living hunter-gatherers are not frozen copies of prehistoric people, so archaeologists looked for another kind of evidence that could not answer questions but could not exaggerate either. Human bones. When some populations adopted farming, their bodies changed. Average height fell in many places, teeth developed more cavities, skeletons began showing signs of nutritional stress, infection, and repetitive strain. A farmer might spend day after day digging soil, carrying harvests, or grinding grain with the same motion for hours. Hunter-gatherers also worked hard, but their activity was generally more varied and did not follow the same routine every day. Humanity had learned to produce more food, but that did not automatically make each individual person's life easier. The strongest evidence that ancient life was not a constant emergency, however, was found somewhere else, deep inside caves. Tens of thousands of years ago, people entered places with no sunlight, carrying lamps, pigments, and handmade tools. They painted horses, lions, bison, and other animals across stone walls. Some figures were drawn with movement and perspective. Creating them required collecting minerals, preparing paint, maintaining a flame, and spending hours in darkness. None of that placed dinner on the fire. Elsewhere, archaeologists found shells pierced with tiny holes and worn as beads. People collected them, sometimes carried them far inland, shaped them, and arranged them as decoration. In a cave in southern Germany, researchers discovered a flute made from a bird bone more than 35,000 years ago. Its maker carefully carved finger holes into a fragile hollow bone and turned it into a musical instrument. Someone chose to spend valuable time making sound instead of making another spear. Ancient people decorated clothing, carved small figures, collected unusual stones, and created patterns that served no immediate survival purpose. They were not merely staying alive, they were trying to make life interesting. So let us reconstruct an ordinary day. You wake near sunrise. Last night's fire is almost dead, but a few hot embers remain beneath the ash. Someone adds dry grass and wood until the flames return. Breakfast might be leftover meat or fish mixed with nuts, fruit, or roots gathered the previous day. People eat together, talk, and loosely decide what needs to happen next. If food is running low, a group leaves to gather plants. A few experienced hunters examine tracks outside the camp, but not everyone leaves at once. Someone stays with the children, someone repairs a stone point. Another person softens an animal hide, fixes a basket, or replaces the cord on a tool. These activities matter, but they happen at a human pace. You can stop to talk. You can help someone else. You can abandon one task and return to it later. If yesterday's hunt was successful, there may be no reason to hunt today.
And when hunters do leave, they do not spend every moment sprinting after an animal. Most of the hunt is walking, watching, following tracks, waiting, and discussing where the animal may have gone. Sometimes they return with meat. Sometimes they return with nothing. When a large animal is taken, the most difficult work begins after the hunt, butchering it and carrying everything useful back to camp. But the food does not belong only to the person who delivered the final blow. It is shared, because luck changes. Today, you feed the group. Next week, the group may have to feed you. Once the day's important tasks are over, something happens that modern people often find difficult to understand. People sit in the shade. They talk. They joke. They play with children. Someone teaches a younger person how to shape stone or recognize a useful plant. Others nap, groom one another, repair clothing, or simply watch what is happening around the camp. From a modern point of view, this can look unproductive. But in a small community, relationships were as important as fire or weapons. There were no banks, insurance companies, police departments, or emergency food programs. Other people were your safety system. If you were injured, they brought you water. If you failed to find food, they shared theirs. If a predator entered the camp, everyone faced it together. Modern people save money for an emergency. Ancient people invested time in the people sitting beside them. Then the sun went down, and conversation changed. Studies of Zhuangzi conversations found that daytime talk was usually practical. Animal tracks, available food, arguments, and plans. But around the fire at night, people shifted toward stories. They described distant journeys, remembered relatives, told jokes, discussed spirits, and imagined events that had never happened. The fire created a small circle of light inside a dangerous darkness. Children learned the history of the group. Rules were explained. Real events became legends. Human culture may not have been born during the hunt. It may have grown afterward, when people were safe, fed, and free to talk about things that were not directly in front of them. So an ancient day was not divided into work and free time the way ours is. A few hours might go toward food, tools, shelter, and children. More hours went toward conversation, learning, play, and rest. After dark came stories, and eventually sleep. The schedule changed with weather, seasons, and luck. Hunger was real. Injuries were dangerous. Some days were exhausting, but the daily shift, the weekend, and retirement did not exist. Then, roughly 10,000 years ago, humans adopted an idea that appeared to make everything easier. Instead of searching for food, they began producing it. Farming promised stability, but a field demands constant attention. Soil must be prepared, seeds must be planted, weeds must be removed. Crops must be protected, harvested, dried, carried, stored, and processed. Agriculture could support more people on the same piece of land. More food allowed the population to grow. A larger population then needed even more food, which required more fields and more labor. The solution created its own trap. A hunter-gatherer group could leave an unsuccessful area. Farmers were tied to houses, animals, stored grain, and soil in which they had already invested months of work. As settlements expanded, people began specializing. Some produced food. Others made pottery, tools, or cloth. Some guarded the stores. Others measured grain, recorded debts, organized labor, or collected taxes. Work was no longer a temporary task that ended when the immediate need was satisfied. It became a permanent role inside a growing system. That system gave us villages, cities, writing, medicine, engineering, and eventually the modern world. It also created schedules, obligations, and the idea that part of your time could belong to someone else in exchange for the resources you needed to live. Today, many of us work so that one day we can have free time. Time to travel, time to make something, time to sit with friends, time to wake up without an alarm and decide what the day will become. Those are the same things humans valued long before jobs existed. The past was not paradise. Ancient people faced hunger, violence, disease, and injuries that modern medicine could solve in minutes. Their lives were less secure in countless ways, but they had something modern life constantly asks us to earn. Time that did not need to produce a measurable result. We make music if we still have energy after work. They made music because making music is something humans do. We schedule time with friends. They depended on their friends every day. We have not become a different species. We have simply built a completely different world around ourselves. Our ancestors worked to survive the present day. We often sacrifice the present day so that we can begin living sometime in the future. And that is the strange trade at the center of human civilization. Work gave us security, cities, and technology. But the free time we hope to earn through work existed long before work did.